They were once Hollywood's ultimate symbols of masculinity, riding horses, firing guns, and captivating millions of Americans on the big screen. But behind those tough, macho cowboy images were shocking secrets the studios tried to hide for decades. Why were these famous Western stars forced to live double lives? And what finally exposed the truth? Today, we're uncovering 10 legendary Western actors rumored or confirmed to be gay, along with the unbelievable behind-the-scenes stories most people never knew. Tell me how famous your favorite star was in your eyes, and which name shocked you the most. Leave your... Ramon Novarro became one of silent Hollywood's biggest heartthrobs after starring in Ben-Hur, A Tale of the Christ in 1925. Handsome, athletic, and undeniably charismatic, he was promoted by MGM as the studio's answer to Rudolph Valentino, a romantic Latin idol designed to captivate audiences across America. On screen, Novarro projected strength and passion, the kind of larger-than-life masculinity moviegoers adored during the golden age of silent film. But behind the carefully crafted image, the reality of his personal life was far more complicated. Novarro never married, something that raised quiet speculation in Hollywood circles for years. To protect his leading man status, MGM's publicity machine worked tirelessly to arrange fabricated romances and silence gossip before it reached the public. In private, however, Novarro was more open with trusted friends and became part of Hollywood's discreet gay social scene, often hosting elegant gatherings at his Laurel Canyon home. Throughout his life, he was linked to several men, including journalist Herbert Howe, who was believed to have been one of his longest relationships. When Talking Pictures arrived, Novarro struggled to maintain the same level of fame. His strong accent and changing audience tastes gradually pushed him into smaller supporting roles, and by the late 1930s, the glory of his silent film stardom had largely faded. Tragically, his life ended in 1968 when two young men murdered him during a robbery at his home. The scandal surrounding his death shocked Hollywood and overshadowed the remarkable legacy. George Maharis became a television sensation in the early 1960s after starring in the hit series Route 66. With his brooding good looks, quiet intensity, and rebellious charm, he quickly captured the attention of audiences across America. Week after week, viewers tuned in not just for the road trip adventures, but for the emotional depth Maharis brought to the screen. At the height of his fame, many believed he was destined to become one of Hollywood's next major leading men. As his popularity grew, Maharis expanded into films, including action and Western-style roles that showcased his rugged image and natural charisma. He had the kind of presence that fit perfectly into the era's idea of masculine Hollywood stardom. But behind the scenes, his career would soon collide with the harsh realities of the time. In 1967, Maharis was arrested on charges related to lewd conduct involving another man. A second arrest followed years later in 1974. Almost overnight, the scandal damaged the carefully managed image Hollywood had built around him. Studios became hesitant, producers stopped calling, and major opportunities quietly disappeared. During that era, even rumors surrounding homosexuality could destroy a career, especially for actors marketed as romantic or masculine icons. Maharis never publicly discussed his private life in detail, choosing instead to remain largely silent as gossip spread through tabloids and industry circles. Although he continued acting for years afterward, he was increasingly pushed into smaller television appearances and supporting roles. The momentum that once made him a rising star was never fully restored, leaving behind the story of a talented actor whose career was deeply shaped by Hollywood's unforgiving standards of the time. Randolph Scott helped define the classic image of the American cowboy for an entire generation. From the 1930s through the early 1960s, he became one of Hollywood's most dependable Western stars. Calm under pressure, soft-spoken, and carrying the kind of quiet toughness audiences admired. Whether he was facing down outlaws in a dusty frontier town or standing alone against corruption, Scott brought a moral strength to his roles that made him unforgettable to moviegoers of the era. Off-screen, however, his personal life became the subject of years of speculation. During the 1930s, Scott shared a home in Santa Monica with fellow Hollywood star Cary Grant. The two men lived together for several years, socialized as a pair, and were frequently photographed enjoying vacations and quiet domestic routines. In Hollywood circles, their close friendship attracted attention, though studio publicists worked hard to present the arrangement as nothing more than two successful bachelors sharing expenses and companionship. Scott later married twice, and publicly maintained the image of a traditional leading man. Still, rumors surrounding his relationship with Grant never completely disappeared. Over the decades, biographers and film historians have debated what truly existed between them, whether it was simply a lifelong friendship, emotional companionship, or something more private that could never be openly discussed during that period in Hollywood history. Whatever the truth may have been, Randolph Scott's reputation as one of cinema's greatest Western heroes remained firmly intact. To audiences across America, he continued to embody the rugged honor and steady masculinity that defined the golden age of the Western film. Most movie fans remember Anthony Perkins as the unsettling Norman Bates in Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, a performance so haunting it became one of the most iconic roles in film history. But before that career-defining role, Perkins appeared in several dramas and Western-influenced films, including The Tin Star and Friendly Persuasion. With his lean frame, intense eyes, and emotionally vulnerable screen presence, he brought a different kind of energy to frontier stories. Less rugged bravado, more quiet psychological depth. During the 1950s and 1960s, Perkins became one of Hollywood's most admired young actors. Yet, behind the polished public image, he struggled privately with his sexuality during an era when studios considered homosexuality a serious threat to an actor's career. Under enormous pressure to conform to Hollywood expectations, Perkins reportedly underwent conversion therapy in hopes of changing himself and protecting his future in the industry. In 1973, he married photographer Barry Berenson, and together they raised two sons, presenting the image of a successful Hollywood family. Friends and biographers later revealed, however, that Perkins had long wrestled with his identity and maintained relationships with men earlier in his life, including dancer-choreographer Grover Dale. That deep inner conflict seemed to echo through many of his performances, giving his characters an unusual sense of fragility and emotional tension. In 1992, Perkins died from AIDS-related complications at the age of 60. Tragically, he kept his diagnosis private until shortly before his death, reflecting the fear and stigma that still surrounded the disease during that period in America. Guy Madison rose to fame almost overnight after appearing in the wartime drama Since You Went Away. Though his role was small, audiences immediately noticed his striking good looks and calm, all-American charm. Hollywood quickly recognized his potential, and before long, Madison became the star of The Adventures of Wild Bill Hickok, one of the most popular Western television series of the 1950s. For many Americans, especially during the golden age of TV Westerns, Guy Madison represented the clean-cut frontier hero, dependable, handsome, and effortlessly masculine. In 1949, he married actress Gail Russell, and fan magazines celebrated the pair as one of Hollywood's most glamorous young couples. But behind the polished headlines, the marriage struggled almost from the beginning and ended after only a few years. Over time, rumors about Madison's private life began circulating quietly within Hollywood circles. Some insiders speculated about his relationships with men and his close friendships within the industry, including longtime gossip linking him to director George Cukor. Madison himself never publicly addressed those stories. As the popularity of traditional Westerns began to decline in the 1960s, Madison's Hollywood career gradually lost momentum as well. Unlike some stars who disappeared completely, he found a second life overseas, particularly in Europe, where he appeared in Italian-made westerns and adventure films. Away from the intense scrutiny of the Hollywood studio system, he seemed to enjoy a more relaxed and independent lifestyle. Although much about his personal life remained private, Guy Madison's image as a classic Western hero endured for generations of television viewers who remembered him as one of the familiar faces of America's frontier era on screen. In the 1950s, Tab Hunter became one of Hollywood's brightest young stars. Tall, blonde, handsome, and carrying the kind of wholesome charm studios believed American audiences adored. He starred in films like The Burning Hills and quickly built a reputation as the clean-cut Western hero and romantic leading man every studio wanted. To fans, especially young women across America, Hunter represented the perfect image of youthful masculinity during Hollywood's golden era. Behind the scenes, however, the reality of his life was far more complicated. Like many actors of that period, Hunter lived under intense pressure to protect a carefully manufactured public image. Studios arranged publicity romances with actresses, including Natalie Wood, to reinforce the illusion of the all-American bachelor. In truth, Hunter was gay and spent years privately navigating relationships while trying to survive within a film industry that viewed homosexuality as a threat to box office success. In 1955, his career nearly collapsed when a tabloid prepared to expose details of his private life following a highly publicized arrest at a party. Warner Brothers, heavily invested in Hunter's squeaky clean image, worked aggressively behind the scenes to contain the damage and redirect media attention elsewhere. The experience deeply affected Hunter and made him far more guarded in public appearances for decades afterward. Despite the fear and secrecy that surrounded his early career, Hunter eventually chose honesty later in life. In 2005, he released his memoir, Tab Hunter Confidential, finally speaking openly about the pressures of living closeted in old Hollywood. For many readers, the book revealed not only the hidden struggle. Forrest Tucker built one of the longest and most recognizable careers in classic Hollywood, appearing in more than 100 films across several decades. Standing over 6 feet 4 inches tall with a booming voice and commanding screen presence, Tucker seemed perfectly suited for westerns and military roles. Whether playing a rugged frontier lawman or a tough army officer, he projected the kind of larger-than-life masculinity audiences expected from Hollywood stars of the 1950s and 1960s. Later in his career, Tucker found an entirely new generation of fans through the television comedy F Troop, where his sharp comedic timing revealed a lighter side that many moviegoers had never seen before. Behind the scenes, however, life in Hollywood was often more complicated than the confident image he projected on screen. Tucker married 3 times and was frequently linked to glamorous women, helping reinforce his reputation as a traditional leading man. Yet over the years, rumors occasionally circulated within entertainment circles regarding his private life and alleged relationships with men. Tucker never publicly addressed those stories, and no definitive evidence ever confirmed them. Like many actors of his era, he lived during a time when studios carefully managed public images and worked aggressively to suppress gossip that could threaten a star's career. Friends and colleagues sometimes described Tucker as a man carrying pressures beneath his outgoing personality, and he reportedly struggled at times with heavy drinking and mood swings. Still, he remained a hard-working performer until the end of his life. When Tucker died of lung cancer in 1986, most tributes focused on his enormous body of work and the enduring charm he brought to generations of film. Looking back at these Hollywood legends, one thing becomes painfully clear. Fame could give these men wealth, admiration, and immortality on screen, but it could not always give them the freedom to live honestly. During Hollywood's golden age, many actors were forced to hide parts of themselves just to protect their careers, their reputations, and sometimes even their safety. Behind the cowboy hats, heroic roles, and perfect smiles were human beings struggling with fear, loneliness, and the pressure to fit society's expectations. Their stories remind us how much the world has changed, but also how important compassion and understanding still are today. True strength is not only found in the roles people play, but in the courage to live authentically. As we remember these stars for their talent and contributions to cinema, we should also remember the human cost of intolerance and the value of allowing people to be themselves without fear or shame. What if some of the most familiar faces in Hollywood have been living stories you never knew existed? For many viewers, it's easy to miss the deeper journeys behind fame, especially when only the surface is shown. This video reveals powerful transformations, showing how these celebrities reshaped their lives, identities, and public images over time. Stories that may challenge what you thought you knew. Stay with us to discover shocking then and now moments, and one unforgettable reveal at the end. Bancho toi biết, cam nhận ngôi sao của bạn là người nổi tiếng như thế nào, và đừng quên bình luận ngay dưới video. Chanel West Coast has long been a recognizable figure in American entertainment, known for her lively personality, quick wit, and distinctive voice. In recent years, however, she became the subject of one of the internet's more unusual rumors. Online speculation began circulating that she was actually Lee Norris, the actor best known for playing Stuart Minkus on the 1990s sitcom Boy Meets World. The theory gained traction because of a perceived facial resemblance, despite having no factual basis whatsoever. In reality, the two share nothing beyond a coincidental similarity in appearance. Lee Norris continued to build a steady career in television and film well into adulthood, while Chanel West Coast carved out her own path through reality television, music, and business ventures. Their backgrounds, careers, and personal lives are entirely separate. Still, the rumor spread rapidly across social media, confusing some fans and even leading a few to believe Norris had disappeared from the public eye. Rather than responding with frustration, Chanel addressed the situation with calm and clarity. She emphasized the importance of accuracy and respect, especially when rumors touch on sensitive topics like identity, gender, or personal history. She reminded audiences that such subjects should never be treated as jokes or casual online entertainment. Despite the ongoing chatter, Chanel has remained focused on her work. From her breakout role on Rob Dyrdek's Fantasy Factory to her continued efforts in music and entrepreneurship, she has demonstrated resilience in the face of misinformation. Her response offers a valuable lesson in today's digital world. Dignity, honesty, and empathy often speak louder than outrage. Elliot Page's journey did not begin with a headline or a carefully staged announcement. It unfolded quietly over many years, through moments of discomfort, deep self-reflection, and emotional struggle. Long before speaking publicly, he carried a persistent awareness that his body and public identity did not fully align with who he truly was. Even as his career flourished in Hollywood, that inner conflict remained unresolved. For much of his life, he navigated this struggle in silence. The pressure to meet industry expectations made honesty feel risky and uncertain. Gender dysphoria affected not only his sense of identity, but also his mental and emotional well-being. Living as a version of himself that felt incomplete became increasingly exhausting. Over time, the weight of hiding the truth grew heavier than the fear of revealing it. In December 2020, Elliot chose to live openly, sharing that he is transgender in a heartfelt and deeply personal statement. This moment marked not a sudden transformation, but the continuation of a long journey toward self-acceptance. For him, transitioning was not about becoming someone new. It was about finally living as the person he had always been. Since then, he has spoken about the clarity and peace that come with authenticity. His work on the Umbrella Academy, where his character Victor also transitions on screen, offered rare and meaningful representation. Through his story, Elliot continues to inspire others, reminding audiences that honesty, courage, and self-acceptance are enduring strengths. Caitlyn Jenner's transition was not the result of a sudden impulse or a brief moment of courage. It was the outcome of a lifelong internal struggle shaped by silence, discipline, and emotional restraint. Long before the world knew her as Caitlyn, Bruce Jenner carried a quiet awareness that her outward identity did not reflect her inner truth. Growing up in mid-20th century America, there was little language or understanding to describe gender dysphoria, so those feelings were carefully hidden for decades. For much of her life, she chose responsibility over personal freedom. Marriage, fatherhood, and extraordinary athletic success, including winning gold at the 1976 Summer Olympics, provided structure and purpose, but they did not resolve the deeper conflict within. In the late 1980s, she privately explored transitioning and briefly began hormone therapy. However, fearing the impact on her family and career, she stepped back, prioritizing stability over self-expression. Though this preserved her public image, the emotional burden continued to grow. By her early 60s, living in denial had become unbearable. Transitioning was no longer just about identity. It became essential for emotional survival and inner peace. In 2015, at age 65, Caitlyn publicly came out in one of the most visible transitions in modern history, including her widely discussed interview with Diane Sawyer. Her introduction to the world was more than a media moment. It was a powerful declaration of long-delayed truth. Her story reminds us that living authentically has no expiration date. Courage can emerge at any stage of life, bringing dignity, renewal, and a sense of true freedom. Fallon Fox occupies a complex and often debated place in modern sports history. Her journey has never been only about competition inside the cage, but also about identity, fairness, and how society responds when long-standing traditions are challenged. Growing up in Ohio, she experienced discomfort with her assigned gender from an early age. At a time when conversations about gender identity were limited and often misunderstood, she learned to keep those struggles private. When she eventually shared her truth with family, the response was painful and lacked support, deepening her sense of isolation. As an adult, Fallon made the difficult decision to transition, believing it was essential for her emotional well-being and personal integrity. After transitioning, she pursued a professional career in mixed martial arts, MMA. In 2013, she became the first openly transgender woman to compete in professional MMA, a milestone that quickly sparked national and international debate. Supporters viewed her as a symbol of inclusion and progress, while critics raised concerns about competitive fairness in a physically demanding sport. Perhaps the greatest challenge she faced was the shift in public perception. Once recognized primarily for her athletic ability, Fallon increasingly found her identity overshadowing her performance. Despite this, she continued to compete with determination and resilience. Her legacy extends beyond wins and losses, encouraging sports organizations, athletes, and fans to engage in thoughtful conversations about inclusion, policy, and fairness. Chaz Bono's transition unfolded gradually, shaped by years of quiet reflection, emotional struggle, and the unique pressure of growing up in the public eye as the child of Sonny Bono and Cher. Born in 1969 as Chastity Bono, he spent much of his early life feeling disconnected from the identity others expected him to accept. Though raised as a girl, he sensed from a young age that something fundamental did not align, a realization that brought confusion rather than clarity. For many years, Chaz tried to meet social and family expectations, hoping conformity might ease his discomfort. Fame only intensified the pressure to appear composed, even as the internal strain grew heavier. Acknowledging that living as a woman was no longer sustainable required deep honesty and the courage to face possible rejection. In his early 40s, around 2008 to 2010, Chaz began his transition, a thoughtful and demanding process involving medical care, emotional growth, and social adjustment. Hormone therapy and surgery were not pursued for dramatic change, but to achieve inner peace and personal alignment, allowing his outward life to reflect his inner truth. His transition also reshaped his relationship with his mother. Cher openly spoke about her initial difficulty while consistently affirming her unconditional love. Over time, uncertainty gave way to understanding. Today, Chaz Bono is respected for his advocacy, media work, and role in raising awareness about transgender experiences during a time when public understanding was still evolving. Andrea Pejic was known to the fashion world long before her transition, originally rising to prominence as Andre Pejic, an androgynous model whose striking look challenged traditional standards of beauty. From the beginning, she stood out for her elegance, versatility, and rare ability to move seamlessly between men's and women's runways. Born in Bosnia and Herzegovina and later raised in Australia after her family fled war, Andrea grew up with a quiet sense of disconnect from the gender role assigned to her. Even as a child, she felt drawn to femininity, despite lacking the language to fully understand those feelings. As her modeling career gained international recognition, her internal conflict deepened. Professional success brought admiration and visibility, but it could not silence the sense that she was only living part of her truth. For years, she carefully weighed the risks of transitioning. In an industry where image defines opportunity, the fear of losing career stability and public acceptance was very real. Yet over time, authenticity became more important than comfort. In 2014, Andrea began her transition, a process requiring emotional strength, medical support, and personal courage. What followed surprised many. Rather than fading from the spotlight, her career entered a new and even more powerful phase. In 2017, she made history as the first openly transgender model to appear on the cover of GQ Portugal. Her transition did not limit her success. It strengthened it. Today, her story reflects resilience, self-acceptance, and the quiet courage to choose truth over fear. Carmen Carrera first gained national attention as a contestant on Season 3 of RuPaul's Drag Race. At the time, she was known as a confident and captivating drag performer, admired for her beauty, discipline, and commanding stage presence. While the show introduced her to a wide audience, it also marked the beginning of a far more personal journey. After leaving the competition, Carmen made the courageous decision to transition and live openly as a transgender woman. This choice required emotional strength and persistence, especially in the face of public misunderstanding. Many viewers struggled to distinguish between drag performance and gender identity, leading to skepticism and unfair assumptions. Despite this, Carmen remained committed to living authentically, believing that honesty matters more than approval. Her transition also led her into advocacy. A defining moment came when she publicly challenged language she felt was harmful to transgender women, including comments made by RuPaul. Although her stance sparked controversy, Carmen stood firm, emphasizing that respect and dignity should never be compromised. For her, speaking out was an act of self-respect, not rebellion. At the same time, her professional career continued to grow. Carmen successfully entered the world of high-fashion modeling, appearing in major publications and walking international runways. Over time, she demonstrated grace and maturity, choosing understanding over resentment. Today, her story reflects courage, growth, and the enduring strength found in self-acceptance. Laverne Cox first captured national attention through her powerful role as Sophia Bursay in the Netflix series Orange is the New Black. With a performance marked by warmth, authenticity, and quiet strength, she introduced millions of viewers to a deeply human perspective on transgender life. For many American families, especially those unfamiliar with such experiences, Sophia became a meaningful first window into the challenges, hopes, and dignity of transgender individuals. Her work quickly made television history. In 2014, Laverne became the first openly transgender person nominated for a Primetime Emmy Award in an acting category, marking a significant milestone for representation in mainstream media. That same year, she appeared on the cover of Time, which described the cultural moment as the transgender tipping point. These achievements reflected a broader shift in public awareness and acceptance. A particularly meaningful detail added depth to her performance. Her identical twin brother, M. Lamar, portrayed Sophia before transition in flashback scenes, bringing emotional authenticity and continuity to the character's story. Beyond acting, Cox has become one of the most visible advocates for transgender understanding in the United States. Through public speaking, documentaries, and interviews, she has encouraged empathy and respect across generations. Today, she is remembered not only as a talented performer, but also as a voice that helped many people better understand transgender lives with compassion and clarity. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new videos. See you in the next one.